Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name is Kate and I haven't posted anything for a while, but I figured this would be a good way for me to kind of ease back into being on BookTube. But anyway, today I will be ranking the 2024 releases that I read in 2024. There's about 27 to go through. So probably won't be crazy long, but yeah, so that's the plan. Let me know if you're here live. Let me know how you're doing. Hopefully this will also be interesting on playback. Hi, Maria. Yeah, I'd love these. I figured this would, since I don't have to edit this, this would be an easy way for me to come back. Hey, Kristen. Yeah, I love that you guys are here right away too. I wasn't sure since I haven't posted in forever. Yeah. And hopefully you'll be back soon too, Maria. I mean, I understand the filming stuff, but hopefully we'll see you soon too. Okay, let me share my screen here. Okay, there we go. Wanted to make sure it was actually showing up here. Okay, so my tier list is a little different from the thumbnail. I know, how dare I? But I wanted to add a couple things. So I have, these are pretty clear tiers here, but my beloathed is obviously my worst of the year. Just I think there's only one book that's going in here, and I had to create a separate category for it. Yeah, let me look here. Yes, for sure. And yeah, this is the one that made me laugh. I think I only have one that'll hurt your feelings and Alba's, but yeah, no avoiding that one. But anyway, so then I have Not For Me, which actually is going to have a few things. It's just, I don't think it's a bad book, but it doesn't work for me. Probably won't remember, pretty straightforward. 6 months from now, a year from now, I probably won't remember anything about the book. Here for a Good Time is the stuff that was fun, but like I understand the complaints people have about it. Loved, obviously, I really enjoyed it, but not quite a new favorite, which is my top one there. So without too much more babbling, I'll get started on these guys. Yeah. Yeah, I've been pretty good this year with posting Goodreads reviews. I'm normally really bad at it. But I've mostly kept up this year except for the last couple. I need to go back and do those sometime soon here. Okay, so I have these in basically order that I read them. I grouped a couple of them just because it made more sense that way. So I'll start with What Feasts at Night by T. Kingfisher. This is the second book in the Sworn Soldier series that follows What Moves the Dead, which was a retelling of Fall of the House of Usher. I actually really enjoyed this. I know a lot of people didn't think it was super necessary because What Moves the Dead was pretty contained, but loved it or Here for a Good Time. I think I'm going to put it in Loved It, mostly because I like Easton as a character, and I also thought that it did a really great job with PTSD rep and sort of war trauma. Since Easton is a vet, I think it handled that really well, even more than the horror elements, which were fine. This one might be a little bit painful for Maria, but this is Tadek and the Princess by Alexandra Rowland. It's the novella that follows Taste of Gold and Iron. And I guess I'll put it in probably won't remember. This follows a side character who I liked quite a lot in A Taste of Golden Iron, but it didn't really sell me on the princess part of it. There's a lot of clothing description, so much clothing description. The only parts I really was super into were when Tedek was interacting with the two main characters from Taste of Golden Iron. Those were great, but the clothing just killed me. At these guys. Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. It definitely still made me cry. So, I mean, props to the ability to make me feel things. I just wish I didn't find the relationship with the princess super believable, I guess. But it was still fun to see his snark about the two main characters. So that part was still really great. And then my single nonfiction, I wish they didn't cut this off so much. So my single nonfiction was Age of Magical I think it's The Age of Magical Overthinking by Amanda Montell. I read Cultish by her last year, I think. And then I read Word Slut and then this one this year. I liked Cultish quite a bit. This one is sort of a memoir / pop psychology about like common fallacies and some mental health stuff. And it's just not memorable. It is narrated by Montell, so I think that part was kind of nice to have, but I definitely won't remember this 6 months from now. I barely remember what it's about now. And then this one is easy. The next one is The Tainted Cup by Robert Jackson Bennett, and it is without question the best fantasy mystery blend I've ever read. It does such a great job of blending sort of classic murder mystery elements with a dark fantasy world. I just blown away. Absolutely loved every second of it. I can't wait to pick up the next one in that series. I've heard it described as like Sherlock Holmes and Attack on Titan. I've never watched Attack on Titan and probably won't because it looks a little too gross for me. But it made me think of like Pacific Rim with these giant monsters. And I guess it's more based on Nero Wolfe than Sherlock Holmes, is what Bennett was saying. So there's sort of a dynamic between the detective and the assistant where the assistant goes out to the investigations and then reports back. So that may or may not work for some people. I thought it was really interesting. And the magic with the way the assistant is able to kind of like cement the scene in his memory was really interesting. So I liked that one a lot. Yeah, it's so good. It is so good. Yeah, I know I've seen a couple people where it didn't live up to the hype for them, and I get it. Like I think I saw in Mel's video, she was frustrated by it because I think if you don't like that dynamic where the investigator is not at the crime scene, she's like there's sort of that distance between them, that might be an issue. But I just thought their dynamic was really fun, so I didn't mind at all. And yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he goes from there. Okay, so this is the one that is going to hurt Kristen and Alba, and that's Someone You Can Build a Nest In by John Wiswell. This just isn't for me. So the premise is that you have Shasheshin, who is a sort of, she made me think of like gelatinous cubes in D&D. But she basically wakes up from a hibernation. There's a family of monster hunters trying to kill her, and she ends up kind of falling for the sister of some of these monster hunters. Yeah, I don't blame you. I'll let you know. You'll see when I go on to the next one. And there's so much on the nose commentary about how silly and hypocritical humans are, and like, aren't we obviously the real monsters? And it's too much. It happens too often. I just wanted it to be a little more subtle about that. And on those same lines, the villains in the story are so mustache twirling. It's like a whole family of Joffreys from like Game of Thrones, and I just could not. Like, I don't think it's bad fully, which is why I'm putting it in not for me and not my beloathed. What I will give it credit for, and the reason it got 2 stars from me instead of 1, is that its handling of trauma, because the love interest lives with obviously a super toxic family, and kind of the way she has to deal with that and the way the relationship is navigated with Shisheshin was so much more believable than it often is. Like, it wasn't just a snap, love solves everything type thing. So I think that was handled really well. It's just that the other parts made it less enjoyable for me. Okay, back to Happy Feelings. Ornithologist Field Guide to Love, by India Holton. I'm going to put it here. Definitely above What Feast at Night. So this is it's a madcap, just wild historical romance with like the teeniest bit of fantasy in the form of magical creatures, where the 2 main characters are rival ornithologists who are trying to be the ones who capture this super rare magical bird that I think gets them like tenure or something like that at the university they're at. It's such a silly concept. And it's amazing. It's so ridiculous. It's like, I keep describing it as Monty Python meets sort of a Bridgerton atmosphere. There's like, it specifically calls out romance tropes that it's making fun of, and just the interactions with some of the various academics. It's just making fun of all of it. It's just so much fun. I really can't recommend that highly enough if you're okay with a lot of humor and just kind of just wild adventure. So highly recommend. It's actually somehow managed not to be my favorite from India Holton. So when I do my honorable mentions, you will see another one from her. I had some failures from her and some successes this year, but she's definitely becoming one I look for. And then I had Empire of Shadows by Jacqueline Benson. This one was fantastic. It's sort of, the best way of describing it is taking The Mummy and setting it in Central America. It's just like, it's got a suffragette type character. Oh, I better drink some water. So the main character is sort of an academic who ends up getting fired because sexism, essentially, and goes on this adventure to Central America for an artifact, and ends up having to hire the main male character. Man, too much talking already. And it's just like historical adventure. It brings in a lot of interesting historical detail, which I really liked. Like things that sort of related to colonialism, that you don't see very often in historical adventure / romance. The reason I wouldn't call it straight historical romance is the romance is very slow burn. I think they only get as far as kissing in the book. But the banter between them is amazing. And seriously, I have not read anything that matches the Rick and Evie vibe as well as Empire of Shadows does. Yeah, I'm gonna be talking a lot and rambling a lot, so I gotta keep drinking water here. Um, but yeah, if you like The Mummy, um, I would highly recommend it. There's like a tiny bit of fantasy in it, but mostly it's a historical adventure. Um, next is the latest Singing Hills cycle book, and this one kind of hurts me a little bit, but I think I have to put it in probably won't remember. I love this series. It's sort of light magic fantasy that feels almost like an excuse for Niveau to sort of play around with different subgenres. And Brides of High Hill is very much gothic horror, um, with the same cleric from all of the other novellas having to investigate this kind of weird house. Um, and it's interesting. I like what Niveau did with it, but it's not one that is ever going to stick with me the way some of the other stories in the series have. It's still an auto-buy series for me. It's just that that particular one doesn't stand out. But I definitely would still recommend the series generally. Then I have Thrum. I don't even remember who writes this. And of course, they've cut it off. But this is the novella that made me create the My Beloathed category here. I hated this. So there was a buddy read for this during the Phantom of the Opera readathon, which led me to read a lot of gothic horror and gothic romance. And this is sort of like a sci-fi gothic horror that has almost thriller elements to it. The writing is very purple prose, which is an immediate mark against it for me. I just don't like that. And I don't like the main character. I don't know that you're necessarily supposed to. She's definitely a unlikable character, generally speaking. And just the story of it felt so overwrought. A lot of people like this. So this is Fable. The reading app has informed me that my 1-star review is a hot take. So maybe take my thoughts with a grain of salt, but I hated it so much. If it had not been a novella, I would have DNF'd it. And once again, on a happier note, I loved Sorcery and Small Magics by Maiga Ducey. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that right. God, did I like it more than Empire of Shadows? Yes, I think so. So this one is light academia, queer romance between these academic rivals that one is a very straight-laced, proper student, and the other one who has a lot of magical power. And the other one is kind of this hot mess bard type character. I loved their dynamic. The fact that like they were constantly not really understanding each other, but then you get to see them have that slow burn, like where they come to realize that maybe the other is not quite so bad. The magic system was super cool, where you have all the magic is done in partners, and one person is sort of like a scribe where they write down the spell, and the other person is able to use that to actually cast it. So it was a really interesting dynamic, and they end up getting cursed and have to work together. And it was just, it's that classic like Grump Sunshine, rivals to not quite lovers by the end of it. Super, super fun. I would definitely recommend that one. And then I have 2 historical queer romances that I'm pairing together. So it's the Mischief and Matchmaking duology that I think I would probably put in here for a good time. I think the second one is slightly better than the first. I find that I appreciate this more than I have a super strong emotional connection to it, because it's historical romance that's set in the Victorian time period. The first one, Don't Want You Like a Best Friend, is a sapphic romance between two women who end up becoming best friends and then eventually lovers. It has an interesting structure to it in that the girls are trying to get their parents together, back together. So it's got a Parent Trap vibe, but that kind of takes away from the sapphic romance because it focuses so much on the parents' romance. But it has a lot of really, really great historical detail about the ways that queer folks in the time period had to navigate relationships and being themselves in a time period where they're not allowed to do that. So I think I really like seeing more representation of that in historical romance, even though I didn't like the focus on the parents' romance as much in that one. And then yeah, and I liked the characters quite a lot. I think it's more of a character-driven romance. And the second one is even better because it has two side characters from the first book that hate each other, have a very bad initial first interaction. I do think there's quite a bit of the miscommunication trope in both of them, but especially in the second one. But it was believable to me. I don't really mind it when it feels like it fits their character. When they're just not saying it because they don't feel like saying it is no. But this one kind of made sense to me, where they're very different kinds of people with their own trauma that they're navigating. But I thought on a character-driven level, it's much more focused on their romance, and I loved them and the romance and was rooting for them the whole time. So I really enjoyed both of those. I just don't know that it quite meets the level of some of the other romances that I've loved. And then Bride by Ali Hazelwood, which is probably one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. I had not read any Ali Hazelwood prior to this year, and then I was surprised by how much I enjoyed this. I would probably put it in here for a good time, only because the writing is not going to blow your mind necessarily, and the beginning has a lot of info dumps, but this is sort of a vampire werewolf romance, and it was so nostalgic for me. It really brought me back to when I was in like my teens and early 20s. I was just inhaling paranormal romance, and this has such strong vibes of that. The friendship between the main character and her best friend is super fun. I just really, really enjoyed it. Yeah. Did I do the audio for that one? I don't remember if I did, but it was just like, it's not amazing writing, but it's just really fun. And honestly, the interactions between the characters in the second half really sold it to me. So I would definitely recommend it if you're okay with just a fun time paranormal romance. It definitely made me want to pick up more from Ali Hazelwood. And I don't even like contemporary romance, but I would try more from her. Just the humor was very fun. Hot Earl Summer. I do not remember the name of the author for this one, but unfortunately it's not for me. I love historical romance, and I thought I would love this one because the male main character is an inventor, and the female main character is very much a stabby, sort of kick-ass type character who is struggling. Well, struggling is not the right word, but she's dealing with chronic pain. And I've heard it has kind of MS rep as well in there. And I feel like my problems with this one are partly me problems. And it's that she's very obsessed with weapons and sword fighting. But then the way she like fights people in it is just so ridiculous. Like, I will admit that I have been involved with various sword fighting groups, so I have a particular preference on that. But it just felt so silly to me. And like someone who's not really in that world, like the way things were described. And the female main character is so prickly to the point of getting mad at the love interest because he's not reading her mind. And she apologizes for it later, but it was just I found her very frustrating. So I didn't end up loving that one the way that I thought I was going to. And then we have Spellbook Library, which is a manga. And unfortunately, I don't think I will remember this. It's very cute. I had a great time with it. Like, absolutely no gripes about it. It's 2 students who are beginning training at a magical library. And the library is magical in the sense that they basically trap creatures into these books that they then have to make sure that the creatures don't get out of them. And it has a sort of himbo main character and then a very standard, mysterious, clearly has some stuff going other main character. And it's fun, but I think it's kind of standard, like magical story manga. Like, I don't think the characters are not gonna stick with me that much other than their archetypes. Like, I don't even remember their names at this point. But it's not a bad time at all. And then I really should have fixed these so you could actually see the whole title, but c'est la vie. The next one is My Darling Dreadful Thing, by Joanna Van Veen, I think is the author's name. And I actually surprisingly enjoyed this more than I expected to. Like, I would definitely put it above Bride. I'm trying to decide if I liked it enough. Maybe not quite enough to put in loved. But anyway, it's gothic horror, historical, set, I think, shortly after either World War I or World War II in the Netherlands. And the main character has a connection to a ghost that is incredibly creepy. And her mom basically uses that connection for her to sort of fake do psychic readings and speaking with ghosts. And then she ends up meeting a wealthier woman who kind of takes her under her wing and takes her away from the toxic relationship with her mom. And the story is told sort of an epistolary style where you have the sections with a psychiatrist who's interviewing the main character after obviously something terrible has happened at the house that she was taken to. And hopefully my dog's not going to lose his mind. And so you get the interviews with the psychiatrist, and then you also get her viewpoint as it's going along. So it's definitely creepy, but not overwhelmingly so. There's a sapphic romance in there. I liked the historical elements. It does have some racist characters that say awful things in it, but it's not super overwhelming on that, just something to be aware of. So I definitely liked it more than I expected to. My friend Chelsea had recommended it, and it's not my usual pick of book, but it was so atmospheric and creepy in a way that really worked for me. So I think I ended up giving it 4 stars, but I really liked it. And then I picked up So Thirsty by Rachel Harrison. And I think mostly this is just not for me. Let me pull it up here. Yeah, I have quite a few romances in this list, so I'll try and remember to circle back to that to talk about it at the end here. Yeah, that's an interesting question. So Thirsty is, so I picked up Black Sheep by Rachel Harrison, which I won't be talking about much here because it's not a 2024 release, but I loved Black Sheep. That I was shocked by how much I enjoyed that. And I read So Thirsty literally the next day after Black Sheep, and I feel like that was maybe not the right move to read it so quickly after that, because I had really high expectations, and So Thirsty was just kind of okay to me. It follows two best friends who basically go for a girls' weekend because one of the main characters, Sloane, husband has been cheating and is just a piece of crap. So it's kind of like an escape from him. And then obviously stuff goes sideways from there. And I just really didn't like Sloane at all. She was so self-righteous. Like, her friend was kind of crazy and like definitely a much more of a party person than Sloane was, but she was just so obnoxiously judgy about it. And even as, like, I don't want to spoil things, but as stuff starts to happen, she continued in that vein in a way that just felt really hypocritical to me, that I really didn't like. And sort of the toxic relationship between her and her friend just wasn't really what I wanted. Like, I don't need a super likable main character, but that one was just too much for me. And then finally we have another new favorite, and that's A Sorceress Comes to Call by T. Kingfisher. Loved this. I think it is genuinely my favorite from T. Kingfisher at this point. I think she just does such a good job of still having that cozy found family element, but this is maybe the darkest one that I've read from her, because the basic premise for Sorceress Comes to Call is that there is a sorceress who is trying to marry up into this noble family. And so one of the main characters is the sister of the man the sorceress is trying to marry. And the other main character is the daughter of the sorceress. And the horror element comes from the fact that when the daughter isn't acting the way the sorceress wants her to, she can essentially take over her body and make her do whatever the sorceress wants. So you have this teen who has no control over herself and has grown up basically being gaslighted constantly and controlled. And then this very like standard T. Kingfisher older heroine character in the sister, who sort of has like a Regency romance element to her part of the story. So it's this really interesting blend of the two that I think Kingfisher nails really well. Yeah, I think she did such a great job with that. It's like I have 5-starred almost everything that I have read from T. Kingfisher, but I do think that is my favorite one. Oh boy. Okay, so another one solidly in the not for me camp is Last Hour Between Worlds by Melissa Caruso. This is my first from Melissa Caruso, and to be honest, I only picked it up because I knew it was going to be a book box pick, and I wanted to see if I actually wanted it before I got the box. So I got an early copy of this one, knowing that it probably wouldn't be for me. And that's because it has time loops. It sort of follows a detective character and a thief where they had kind of become friends, and then there's some kind of betrayal in their past and they're no longer friends, but they get trapped at this party where there's a constant time loop. And they have to get to the bottom of it, basically. And I hate timey-wimey stuff like time loops, time traveling, most multiple dimension stories just don't work for me. I find them obnoxious to follow and repetitive, and that was definitely true with Last Hour Between Worlds. And the world building is very loosey-goosey with this one. Like, I don't mind if you expect me to pick it up as I go along, but it never really made sense. And the implications for the world with the magic and sort of the world building of it, it didn't make sense that the world wouldn't have changed based on that. So I just really didn't like that. I didn't like the main character's personality trait seems to be new mom, and not really anything else. So it just didn't work for me. I think if you really identify with the struggles of a new mom and you're okay with not really understanding how the world works, then it could work better. But it just, in every way, was not for me. I didn't hate it enough to put it in my belows, but it's definitely one of the least successful books for me this year. And then I'm putting A Matter of Execution and Echoes of the Imperium close together, even though I read a couple books in between them, because this is they're so closely connected. So A Matter of Execution is a prequel novella, and Echoes of the Imperium is the first novel in a series that's being written by Olivia Atwater and her husband Nicholas Atwater. Olivia Atwater is the author of Small Miracles, which was an SPFBO winner, and the Half a Soul Regency Fairy Tales series that I initially didn't like, but then came around to loving. It was a weird transition for me this year. I think that was this year or last year. I don't remember. But A Matter of Execution is steampunk mixed with fae in a way I don't think I've seen anybody do. And this is absolutely my jam. I loved this. I think so. A Matter of Execution follows a goblin captain who gets wrongfully accused of a crime and is going to be executed for it. And he essentially, the story is him basically escaping the noose and then getting roped into a heist. And very high action, just really reminds me of like a steampunk fae version of Star Wars and Firefly. Like it's very much the vibe of Star Wars and Firefly. And that's even more true of Echoes of the Imperium, which is straight up a new favorite for me. Because again, it's like that melding of steampunk and fae I've never seen anyone else do, where you have the traditional sort of capricious fae, sort of like Emily Wilde style, and then airships and like air battles and crazy action adventure. I think it's better for people who are more plot driven because there's great characters, but it's very high action. Like just wild. I know Nicholas Atwater is doing the audiobook for these, which I can't, he's already done it for A Matter of Execution and he's working on it for Echoes. And he's fantastic. So if it sounds at all interesting, definitely check out the audiobook when he gets that for Echoes, because it's just super fun. There's a lot to do with colonialism because they've just overthrown an empire. And it kind of makes me think of Star Wars New Republic, where they have to figure out what's next. And they end up getting involved in sort of the political machinations of the various groups that are now trying for power. So found family, but again, very action focused. And then another fantasy, sort of historical fantasy romance, and that's Sword Crossed by Freya. I don't know if it's Marsky or Marsk. I'm going to go with Marsk, I guess. This one I read with Maria and Clementine, and I really enjoyed the buddy read of it. I think I have to put it maybe just above Mischief and Matchmaking. So it's very reminiscent of like Renaissance Italy, where you have a duelist character who ends up getting hired to fight on behalf of the groom for a merchant family wedding. And I thought I would love this. This is one of my most anticipated reads of the year. And the beginning was so rough. Because there's so much detail on these merchant guilds that are trading and processing different types of fabric, like wool and I think silk, and sort of the political maneuvering between them. I was so bored. There's so many info dumps in that first half. And the duelist character is, again, sort of that hot mess type character I tend to really enjoy, where he's got good intentions, but he's always doing stuff that just completely undercuts whatever he's doing. And then the other is very straight-laced. I guess I have a theme here. But the duelist is such a bad instructor. Like the sword fighting descriptions, chef's kiss perfection. But he's so bad. He's the worst instructor. It's like the classic comes naturally to him, so he has no idea how to describe how to do things. He's just so obnoxious. But then in the second half, you get a lot more of their interactions between the characters and between the different family members that are involved with the wedding, and it got so much better. So much better. So I feel like I have to put it here just because I didn't have as good of a time as with Bride, but the second half pulled it up from what might have been like not for me. Oh, okay, good. I felt like I was maybe being a little harsh on it, but yeah, that first half was friggin' rough. Okay, so Teller, we're getting down there. Only a couple more to go. Teller Small Fortunes by, I think it's Julie Leong? I'm not sure how to pronounce that. This is cozy fantasy. Another one that was in a book box that I wasn't sure I would enjoy. And I enjoyed it more than I thought I would. I don't know if it's just because my expectations were super low as somebody who does not like cozy. But I wasn't as bored as I usually am in a cozy fantasy. The story basically follows Tao, who has the ability to see the future. And because of stuff that's happened in the past, she only tells small fortunes now. She doesn't want to do any of the big sort of higher stakes fortunes. So she travels around in her little wagon, telling fortunes at various villages. She keeps moving around a lot because she's obviously not from the country that she's currently in. And so she deals with some racism and sort of general small-mindedness from some of these more rural areas. And she ends up traveling with a group that are trying to find a missing child. And I liked the characters. I think it's a little bit rough because it's got slightly higher stakes than you sometimes see in, like, say, Legends and Lattes. But it doesn't do more than surface level handling of the racism element. So I'm not sure it knew exactly where it wanted to land on that balance. But I did enjoy the relationships that formed. There is a really awkward moment where the white baker person who ends up falling in with them is coming up with fortune cookies. And I really wish, and maybe this is a me problem, but I really wish we could convince cozy authors to stop reinventing fantasy versions of things like that, like the cinnamon rolls and Legends and Lattes, which is probably a hurtful opinion. And then fortune cookies in this one. It just feels so twee to me. But anyway, my complaint about cozy fantasy aside, I think it's a decent cozy fantasy. If you like cozy fantasy and you're okay with some stakes, you'll probably enjoy it. I liked it more than I thought I would. And then I have Cult of the Lamb, which is a graphic novel based on the video game. And I liked it, but I probably won't remember it 6 months from now. I couldn't get into the video game because it's just doesn't really work great for my brain. It's sort of the main character is a lamb who gets sacrificed and then brought back from the dead for revenge, essentially. And so it's cute but also gory. It sort of rides that line a little bit. And the graphic novel does a good job of the art style really matching the game and working better for me in the story than the game did. So if I don't know if it's going to be as appealing if you've played the game, but if you've been curious about the game and just haven't tried it, it might be worth picking up. Yeah. You already know how I feel about cozy fantasy, though, so I can't imagine my opinions on that are surprising. Yeah. Yeah. Every once in a while, there's one that works. But, you know, it's just easily bored. Okay, so then my final hot take of this video is Dead Cattail Assassins by P. Jaley. I'm not sure how you pronounce his full name. Clark. This is not for me. Super not for me. And it's really frustrating because I really loved some of his other historical fantasy. He's got some amazing ones where he's blending. I can't think of the name now. But there's one where he blends sort of African mythology with New Orleans in a sort of alternate Civil War history, which was fantastic. Loved that. And I really liked some of his short stories with the Dead Djinn universe where he's taking alternate history Cairo. And this one is the second one that's been really disappointing to me on a mystery level. So the first one was Master of Djinn, which is the only full-length novel in the Dead Djinn universe, which I hated the resolution of the mystery and the villain. Then Dead Cattail Assassins follows a group of undead assassins, as you might guess by the dead part of that. And one of the assassins ends up having something go wrong with her job and then kind of has to deal with the ramifications of that. And I can't get super into why this doesn't work for me. The ending, without getting spoilery, so I won't get super into, there's a specific trope that happens that I hate, that was kind of the first strike for me. And then the ending is super convenient. Like there's all these obstacles set in the way of Aveen, the undead assassin. And then it just feels like we kind of just shove that aside. Oh, never mind. That's not a problem, really. And I don't mind an accent for, or like a dialect for some of my fantasy, but this one has a character speaking in a dialect at the end of the book that is virtually impossible for me to understand. And I really struggled to figure out what even happened at the end of this one. So it just super wasn't for me. I think if you don't have some of my issues with tropes I can't name, this is the worst kind of review for this. But I think other people will enjoy it a lot more. And I know a lot of other people have enjoyed it a lot more. Just for me, I could not hang with the resolution of that mystery. Then Briar Book of the Dead by A.G. Slatter. This is a witchy fantasy. And I am very hit or miss on witchy books, but I really liked this. It's my first book that I've read by A.G. Slatter. I own several of her others. And this I ended up picking up because Kristen's book club, the Black Cat Book Coven, hopefully I remembered that name correctly, picked this for December, and I already had it on my TBR, so I figured I'd get to it. And it follows, the main character is the only non-magical person in her witchy family. And then there's like a sudden death in the family, and she ends up getting pushed into a position that a little earlier than she expected, and finds out that she does actually have the ability to speak to the dead. And then stuff kind of progresses from there. There's a bunch of family secrets that they kind of have to navigate. And it's very interesting. I loved the magic of it, like the price that they had to pay for it. I thought the family relationships were interesting, if a little toxic at the beginning. And I just like the way that Slatter writes, sort of dark-ish fantasy. So I thought that was really, really great, and I definitely want to pick up more from her. Yeah. Yeah, I definitely, I don't like witchy books most of the time, but I'm glad that the book club had me pick that one up, and it was fun to join your discussion. Well, like join in the comments your discussion on it. And then my last one, this is not going to surprise a single person. Emily Wilde's Map of the Otherlands is, of course, a new favorite. Do I like it more than... I don't know. I refuse to make that decision right now because I'm going to have to do that when I do favorites of the year. But I loved... This is the second book in the Emily Wilde series. I put off reading it basically all year because I think I got the ARC for it last December. And I was so scared that it wasn't going to live up to the hype because I've read the first Emily Wilde book like 4 times now. It's just, I love how grumpy Emily is. She's perfection. It has the grump sunshine element that I'm always a sucker for. And it's just that light academia mixing in sort of the capricious historical fae. Just amazing. I love that. I don't think I like Map of the Otherlands quite as much as I like the first one. It's got a little bit less of a found family element to it because you're basically being introduced to a different group of fae as Emily and Wendell end up traveling to, I think, Austria. And I can't get into why without being spoilery, but it was interesting to see other types of fae and see them explore something a little different and kind of seeing them navigate their relationship to each other was really fun. So I liked that quite a lot. And I am very intrigued at where this leaves off. I'll be very interested to see how Fawcett's going to handle that third book. But I will probably not wait almost an entire year to read that one. Yes. Yeah, no, I totally get that because I think it, on a character level, it's much more focused on that. So I think it's well worth picking up if you at all enjoyed the first one. It sort of is an expansion on everything we liked in those. Okay, so before I close this out, I have to think about which romance I liked the best. That's a difficult one. So there is a side romance in A Sorceress Comes to Call that I freaking love, between the sister character and another side character that's kind of been pursuing her for a long time, that was just so supportive and sweet. Like, I just really, really loved that relationship. And then, of course, Sorcery and Small Magics, I think, would be the other one that I really, really liked. Just because it has that, I love a slow burn. And there's moments where, especially towards the end of it, where one of the characters is clearly just not picking up on the fact that the other person's feelings have changed. And I don't know what it is about that, where like the reader knows that the other person is into them now, but they haven't figured that out yet. I don't know. It's just so much fun. I absolutely love that. So yeah, those are all of the 2024 releases that I read. Let me highlight this guy. Yeah. It's so cute. It's just precious. I do highly recommend that one if you're into that trope. Yeah, so if you didn't join the live, let me know your favorite 2024 release, and no pressure, Maria and Kristen. Let me know what your guys's are as well. It was super fun to do this. I appreciate you guys saving me from having to edit myself just yet. I will be having a next week. I will do the standard least favorite, honorable mentions, and favorite of the year. So definitely keep an eye out for those. And then I will hopefully be a little more active this year and see you guys in future videos. Thank you, Maria and Kristen, for keeping me company. I appreciate it. And I will see you guys in the next one.